Welcome to the Inner Solutions live stream. Today is November 10th, 2020. 2020 is really turned around. It's turning into the best year ever.
It's coming around, yeah.
It's definitely coming around. My name is Jim.
This is Ennis.
And we are Inner Solutions, a company dedicated to providing mental health resources, coaching, and any other thing that we think is useful to people who are suffering from panic attacks, anxiety, depression, or any other mental health ailment, because we've been through a lot of it, and we were able to work through it holistically. We want to help you too. So welcome.
Yeah, welcome. We do this live stream every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Time. We are here answering any questions you have, any sort of comments you want to throw in the chat. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, just comment and we'll see it. We'll try to do our best to answer. Sometimes it's tough, here on the live stream. If we're not sure what you're going through or if we are unable to help you, we ask that you schedule a call with us. It's a free call where we can talk to you in more depth, but we'll do our best to answer any questions that you have in the live stream and hopefully give you some tools, some perspectives, some exercises, something to get you going to start feeling better. Oftentimes we want to emphasize that you're not stuck. This is one of the biggest
misconceptions.
Biggest irrational beliefs that people have is that, well, I've been feeling bad for a while, so therefore I'm going to be feeling bad forever. Or just this way that I am right now, there's nothing that can be done about it. I've tried everything. I've done everything. Nothing worked. And just to cut through all that, all I can say is you're not stuck. You're really not. There's so many different practices, exercises, modes of therapy, lifestyle changes that you can try that I know you haven't tried all of it. I know you haven't tried everything. And maybe to the one in a billion person that has, try it again because you're different now. You're always changing. Things are always adapting. You're learning more. And what you can handle now is a lot more than what you could have handled 10 years ago. So that's one of the core messages that we have for people is you're not stuck. Beyond that, we just try to help you have more and more rational perspectives, more and more healthy lifestyles, more and more ways of living your life that is congruent and in alignment with what you really want. In particular, we help people with panic attacks, anxiety, depression. So anyways, if you have a question about those things, throw them in the chat and we'll try to get to them as soon as we can.
Yeah, welcome to our friends on Facebook. Welcome to our friends on YouTube. We are simulcasting here because we are technologically savvy.
We did it. We figured it out.
So yeah, just if you have a question or a story, you want to share something or share what you're going through, this is one of the main intentions we have with this group is to build a community, a supportive community, to know that, yeah, like Anna said, you're not alone and you're definitely not stuck. So one of the best ways that we find people find a little bit of peace, if not a lot of peace, is that they know that there's other people suffering from the same thing. Mm-hmm. So you throwing out your situation or what you're going through or asking a question, there could be tons of people going through the same thing, and we see that every week. So please open up to connection, and we love that.
On that note of, when you see other people going through the same thing, I think one of the beautiful parts of that is it gives you permission to acknowledge what you're feeling, because so often people can go through their lives pretending like everything's okay. They might have all sorts of heavy emotions that they're kind of just ignoring. When people ask them, like, how are you doing? Are you okay? They might say, I'm fine. I'm doing okay. But you never really acknowledge and honor what you're actually feeling. And so because of that, you end up kind of stuck in this loop of you're feeling a lot of stuff that needs to get processed, needs to come out, but you're not honoring it. And so this happens to people all the time. It happened to me, I would say earlier today. I was a little upset, got angry, but I felt like I didn't have time to get angry, and so I kept sort of just going about my day. I didn't do any of the normal stuff that I do when I give myself a break, and so it kind of just kept snowballing, kept growing, until it got to the intensity that it demanded attention. And this is a really big pattern whenever you're not honoring your emotions, it's kind of like you end up letting it fester, and all those unprocessed emotions grow and grow and grow until they kind of demand your attention, and then they become impossible to ignore. But looks like we have a question here on YouTube. Zcow says, "Hi, I'm suffering from depersonalization and derealization for about a year, and my horrible vision makes it harder and worse." So when it comes to depersonalization and derealization, oftentimes that is a response from the body to let you know that something about the way that you're living is overwhelming, and it's just kind of holding you back. For example, I get depersonalization and derealization whenever I am in a social situation where for a prolonged period of time I feel like I'm being fake. So you know those like, yeah, okay, maybe, I don't know if Jim has, because he's one of the most straightforward people I know. But if you can imagine, you're in a conversation and someone's like talking, and you feel this pressure to kind of like, you know, like be looking at them like, okay, yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
And it's like overly nice. Your eyebrows are raised. You're like making too much eye contact, and you feel like maybe some pressure to look like you're listening. Sometimes I get that, and especially, you know, a few years ago, I had a big problem with that, and I noticed every time that I let myself do that for like an hour or an hour and a half, if it was a long conversation, I would feel totally drained and kind of depersonalized by the end of it.
Yeah.
And it was just a way of my body reacting, saying, "Hey, this persona fatigue, this self-judgment that you're carrying during these social interactions, it's not conducive. We can't maintain this much energy output." Because it turns out that caring about what other people think and controlling how you are perceived is extremely exhausting. It takes up a lot of energy. So that was my trigger. Maybe for you it's something else. But typically you want to look for the situations, the patterns of when you feel depersonalization, derealization. Are there any times when it's worse? Maybe when you're with your family, when you're with your friends, when you're at your work. So here we got an update. Zaykow says, "Yeah, depersonalization. I have tunnel vision and fog around my eyes, and sometimes I see floaters. I did several eyes exam. There's no mistake." So I appreciate you giving me more context for the symptoms, but keep focused on the underlying root of it. What is causing those symptoms? What is causing the depersonalization? So can you tell me about any of the patterns, any of the
when it happens? Yeah, what would happen? There's kind of two different categories. There's what Ennis is talking about, which is more like an exhaustion, and that's a sign that could be a depersonalization. And I find that depersonalization does usually happen when you're exhausted from something. The other is it's kind of a coping mechanism for your mind, and this is more in the dissociation realm. But your mind has amazing coping mechanisms where if you're feeling like you're in a really tough situation, or you're really stressed, or it's painful or something, your mind will do its best to kind of disconnect from your body so it doesn't have to feel these heavy emotions. And so the dissociation, depersonalization, derealization, they have a lot of overlap in symptoms. It's a lot of fog. It's a lot of feeling disconnected, feeling out of control, like you're kind of watching yourself in a movie. It's also one of the most common symptoms of anxiety and of someone who went through trauma or who's suffering a really heavy emotional time. And so a lot of times you have to be really specific about what is the situation, what is the pattern, because you may be swapping one for the other when it's not quite right. But yeah, the depersonalization typically is from a really heavy fatigue, a mental fatigue, a physical fatigue.
And one of the things that kind of keeps it going is it has its own feedback loop, just like how panic attacks have their own feedback loop, where the sensation of a fast heart rate or dizziness can trigger thoughts of I'm about to have a panic attack, and that creates fear, and that creates a chain reaction of panic. Depersonalization, derealization has similar things where you notice that you're feeling depersonalized, you notice that you're feeling derealized, and then you judge that as like bad. You say, oh, maybe I'm going crazy, maybe there's something wrong with me, what if I always feel like this, what's going on? And so you have a thought that basically triggers you to feel really, really bad about how you're feeling. So those self-judgments about the depersonalization create more stress, more anxiety. And that, of course, creates more depersonalization, keeps it around, and you're kind of caught in that loop. You mentioned, Z, that yours started about a year ago from a bad trip with weed. I've heard that all the time. Very, very common scenario where, smoking can trigger a moment of depersonalization, and then likewise, just like how somebody who had a panic attack one time keeps triggering themselves into more panic attacks, somebody with depersonalization, when they experience it one time, they can kind of keep triggering themselves back into it because of the intense resistance to that experience. Similar to panic attacks, you can actually treat depersonalization by totally allowing all the sensations that come with it, and by getting rid of the behaviors that were causing that immense stress in the first place. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach. So, whatever your initial stressor is, we want to try to identify that and reduce that. So maybe for you, it's interacting at work, or interacting with friends and family, or just something in your life situation where you're continuously every day getting stressed out, triggered by this, and it's keeping you in a heightened state. When you stay in that heightened state, you're frying your nervous system. You're kind of overstimulating your nervous system and making you susceptible to that depersonalization. But on top of that, we want to address the judgment around depersonalization. And this is a topic that I think Jim might cover a little more later, about honoring your feelings. When you're sitting there and you're feeling depersonalized, that's one thing. But then to add on to that by judging it as bad or wrong, or that something is bad going to happen next, that just sustains those. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach of identifying what's stressing you out all the time, and then not resisting or judging the experience of depersonalization, even though it can feel scary and make you feel like you're going crazy, but you're not. For anyone out there with depersonalization, if you've been suffering it for a long time, I understand. It's something that you can overcome. It's not something that's going to make you go crazy. It's just another symptom of the anxiety.
Yeah, and what Edis was saying is kind of working from the front in, basically, that the most recent thing you have is the judgment of the depersonalization. Then there's the depersonalization. Then there's the cause and the source of the depersonalization. And so, Z, I would highly recommend you get with a coach or a counselor and really start to break down what is the behavior that's exhausting your system or causing you just to float out and disconnect from your body. What's exhausting you mentally and emotionally? And you can do that. Check in the description. You can set up a free call with us. We would love to chat with you if that feels right for you. But highly recommend you get with someone or do some journaling and meditation. And one of the keys to depersonalization for me that brings me back down is just a really calming meditation, just like a 10-minute quiet meditation, just trying to release some energy from my body, some of the electricity feeling like, and just trying to come back down and just reset myself and reground myself.
Yeah, Z, for likewise, to add on to that, anything that de-stimulates your nervous system is going to help tremendously. So a quick summary of that is avoid caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, sugar,
anything fun,
anything content related, like don't watch a bunch of movies in a row, or that scary movies, or like violent movies. Anything fun, as Jim was saying.
I'm just kidding.
But
it's not fun.
Avoid those things if you can. Caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, sugar, spicy food, and a lot of stimulating kind of violent or scary content. On top of that, and I would say the news is that these days, And on top of that, you want to add behaviors like exercise, meditation, leafy greens, long walks in nature, and just moments of doing absolutely nothing, where you're just sitting there doing nothing. And all of these behaviors are going to help to de-stimulate your nervous system, to calm it down. And when you have a healed nervous system, it'll be a lot easier to actually rest. You'll sleep better. You'll have less depersonalization. If not, it'll be gone. And it's all about managing that nervous system so it's not too stimulated.
Let's talk to some of our Facebook friends here. Lisa says, hi, guys. Hi, Lisa. What if holding in those feelings help us feel protected from the world and whatever is causing it? I'm not 100% sure what feelings you're talking about. I think she's referring to something earlier. Lisa, can you be more specific about what feelings you're talking about?
So just like, I think she's just saying any difficult feelings, like whatever difficult feelings we're dealing with. So what if holding in those feelings, whatever they may be, helps us feel protected from the world?
Yeah. So I would think of it as like a volcano that eventually is going to blow. That's what I would think of it as. So Lisa, what we try to do, well, not what we try to do, what we do with clients one-on-one is we help them release it in a really controlled way, in a really, when you willingly go in to deal with something that's inside of you, to process through it willingly, and you're in a situation where we work with the kind of different parts of your personality, we don't let you get overwhelmed. We have lots of tools to reground you if something comes on really strong, because when you're dealing with really sensitive emotions, you can tap something and they can just boom. It's been waiting to come out, waiting to be tapped into. So yeah, I would encourage you immensely to get with someone to slowly start to tap into those things so that you can process through them, because that fear that you have of going into the emotion is irrational. And also, it's incredibly, incredibly important to do that, to process through whatever's in you, because that's going to be a key element to your anxiety and to your inner misalignment and stress. Rita says, 100%. I worked for an LPC intern. Then I had a fear of succeeding, not of failure, but of succeeding. Why? Maybe because I was the first person in my family of origin to get my graduate degree. Do you want to talk about guilt?
That's an interesting, when you have this fear of succeeding, that can come from many places. It can come from, almost like a survivor's guilt of, well, you know, my friends and family only made it to a certain level, and it'd be insulting to them or hurtful to them to surpass that. You might fear the added responsibility of, well, now that you're, you know, a fully licensed, you're an LPC, yeah, then you're having to deal with a bunch of workload. You have to be responsible for these people, and basically, you're worried about how your life will change once you've succeeded. It can also be a fear of when you're succeeding that you're going to change in some way that's fundamental, where or maybe some of your relationships will change. There can be many various types of fear of success. In what you're describing there, this feeling of you're the first person in your family to get a graduate degree, and so you see that as this like really big deal, and the fact that they haven't makes it overwhelming. For that, I would say just kind of get clear. Why do you think that's a bad thing? Because I mean, logically, you would think your family is proud of you. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're not proud. Maybe they're
jealous.
Maybe they're jealous.
Yeah.
But I would say get clear on what you think is the issue. If you think that they are proud, but you're afraid that they're not, or that they're jealous, but maybe they're acting like they're not, whatever it is, try start with this conversation. Like, talk to your parents or your family and say, hey, I am a graduate and you're not. How do you feel about that? And if that's too strong, that's honestly going to be a helpful conversation. But if that's too strong, you can always word it differently. You can say, like, how do you feel about me graduating? Do you feel proud? Do you feel anything at all? And just ask, kind of start that conversation. And you'd be surprised how far you could go by just admitting some of the fears you have. Like, if you started a conversation with them saying, hey, I fear success because I'm the first person in our family to do this. What do you think about that? And who knows what they might say? They might say, hey, actually, I have been jealous of you and I'm sorry. They might say, what are you talking about? We're so proud of you. Go get a PhD. But I think that's a starting point, just kind of opening up, having that conversation, seeing what comes of it. And then beyond that, fear of success can be tricky because it's so easily masked by so many other things. Like if your identity is as how do I put this? Okay. When it comes to fear of success, a lot of it comes down to your identity. If you identify as a high school dropout who is overweight and completely broke, then when you go into an opportunity where you are now a healthy, fit graduate with lots of money, you're not just changing your circumstances, and you're not just changing what you see in the mirror and what you see in the bank account. You're changing your fundamental identity. And when you change your identity, that is scary. There's forces inside you that are trying to keep equilibrium and trying to keep things the same for survival. So when you're making these big changes to what's appropriate for you, there's going to be some pushback internally, almost like parts of you that are just not ready for that much change. And so when it comes to being okay with that kind of success, whatever that success looks like for you, because, I mean, some people who come from a family of PhDs might look at that and go, only a graduate degree? Some people who are billionaires might look at that and go, oh, you're only a millionaire? So it's all relative. It's totally relative, right? One person's success is another person's failure. But if success for you is overwhelming in that particular regard, you want to start to shift your identity, so to speak. You want to look at, who do I think I am? Do I see myself as this type of person or that type of person? What is appropriate to me? And how do you begin to shift that identity? And that's a really big challenge for all of us. For every single person listening, you have certain blocks that keep you from going past a certain amount of money, a certain amount of physical health and well-being, a certain level of relationship satisfaction, where once you hit that sort of upper, that ceiling, so to speak, you lose the motivation. This happens a lot with with money, I think, with me and you and people that we work with. It's like once their bank account hits a certain low level, an energy in them wakens up to get them to really fix that. And it's like, oh, go. Suddenly they become very tight with their spending, very hardworking, very aware of opportunities. And then when it hits a certain ceiling, it's like your foot immediately leaves the gas pedal.
Yeah.
And you become a frivolous, you spend more, all that.
In the same way that your mind is programmed so that you don't feel something negative that you've already felt, it's also programmed to be more weary of things that you haven't felt yet, because what's familiar is comfortable, and so your mind, like Ennis was saying, wants to repeat the familiar thing. So there's always kind of a barrier to entry into a new stratosphere for some people, especially if there's things like feeling disconnected from your family. And look, I've had similar fears of success where I've noticed these kind of self-sabotage behaviors in myself and clients. And for me, it was kind of one of two things. Number one, feeling guilty, like feeling disconnected. Even when, I had my coaching practice up to charge more, I felt guilty about it, that I was leaving people behind, that I wouldn't be as accessible to people who really needed help. And, that guilt is a cognitive distortion. It's just not necessarily true. And it's also, it's innately putting my needs, below what I think is some belief that I don't know if I'm accessible or not. And the other is like there's a loneliness too. If there's a group of people that you feel like you're kind of, you know, professionally ascending beyond, there's a disconnect there. And that could be really scary if you're really connected to your family, or if you're a people pleaser and you're sensitive to other people's judgments, which are like, wow, look at her, she's this, or she's, oh my God, you know, we're not in the same echelon. So those two things were some key elements for me as far as the fear of success, feeling lonely, and then feeling guilty about, you know, leaving people behind. And they're both really grounded in the same thing.
Well, what do you think are some next steps for her, like just basic practices or perspectives that she can utilize?
Yeah, I think having a conversation about it is the best thing, probably the quickest way to it. But I would get really clear about why you're doing what you're doing. Like becoming an LPC. I mean, what's your intention with it? It's most likely to help people, and that's a really positive intention. And then furthermore is getting in touch with the parts of you that either feel guilty or feel affected by those external opinions, which is like, why does it bother you if your family has a judgment about it? You know, do you feel lonely in other ways? There's usually something else going on that it's triggering. So it's not necessarily triggering in the actual event. If say a family member judges you for that, it's going to trigger something inside of you, a part of you. So I'd get really in touch with those parts of you and help them. And if you have to pivot, if you feel disconnected from your tribe per se, you need to supplement your social circle and get a soul family, which is like, my family, I can feel pretty disconnected from them. So I have like my soul family, people that I kind of pick up along the way that I feel very, very connected with, that I don't need to talk to all the time, but maintain a beautiful relationship with. And it's extraordinarily life-saving for somebody like me who's really extroverted and feeds off of other people's energies. Yeah. But I would get very exploratory, Rita. Very exploratory. Get with a coach or a counselor or someone who can help you explore that stuff, because it's important. Carmen says, I'm happy to hear you. Hey, Carmen. Welcome.
Welcome.
So good to see you. Lisa says, yes, like what Enid. And then she says, yes, like what Ennis was talking about earlier. Great. Yoli says, hi, Ennis. I enjoy working with you. Oh,
thank you.
He's so great. Look at this. Look at this Ennis soundboard over here, this Ennis support board. Lisa says, I started working with Ennis. He's been awesome. Stephanie says, Ennis is the best. Please call these guys. You won't regret it. Seriously, I don't think I would be where I am without him. So grateful for you. We did not pay these people to show up on our stream and start sharing. Look at. It's all for Ennis. Hey.
That's my mom. Hey, Mom. How you doing?
Z says, so Z, going back to Z, who was talking about suffering from depersonalization, said coffee is a trigger, sleeping too much a trigger, sleeping a little a trigger. I haven't tried any medication. I feel good after going to the gym. That's your nervous system, bro.
Z,
Big time.
You're already, I love that you're noticing, like, coffee has an effect on you, and you've noticed that. Sleeping too much or too little can have an effect, and you're starting to notice that. You said you feel good after going to the gym. Wonderful. That is a clear sign that this depersonalization and derealization is tied to your nervous system. It's overstimulated, and no wonder. You're a firefighter, so you're kind of in this stressful position often, and for you, it's like you never know what you're showing up to. Like if you're on that truck and you're on your way to the scene, it could be nothing. It could be everything, and so there's a lot of nervousness, uncertainty there. It's an inherently stressful job that I want to say thank you. Thank you for doing that. Somebody has to, and I'm glad it's you. And so in that moment, when you come home, you've got to cool down. You've got to have a intentional way of releasing all that extremely stressful emotion, all that extremely stressful cortisol. Yeah,
the buzz in your nervous system. Your nervous system you can't help but buzz when you're in a highly stressful situation like that.
Yeah, and I know it's going to be very tempting to want to come home and like veg out or do some kind of, really low mental activity. But if you can just take 2 hours, an hour even, to do some cardio, do some meditation, eat some leafy greens,
journal
a bit,
talk to a friend, just like a friend who's a really good listener. Yeah, something something to release.
Yeah.
Big time. Yeah.
Something to balance out like that intense burst of high energy during the day needs to be paired with extremely calm, almost boring kind of nightlife where you're sitting there doing nothing. I know people think that staring at your phone or watching Netflix is doing nothing, but no, it's actually watching content is actually an extremely stimulating activity. And so when you're doing that, it's just adding to that stress of the day. So I really think that if you can, and this goes for people with anxiety and panic attacks too, if you can get a handle on your nervous system, a lot of things fall into place.
Definitely. So there's a couple things you want to talk about tonight. What's up, Sal? How are you, sir? There's a couple things you want to talk about tonight, but I think I also want to invite people to ask us questions. We've never done that before. Let's invite people if they want to. Usually we're saying, do you have questions about your anxiety? I think part of what I want to do is invite people if they want to ask us questions, mental health related. I think that'd be a positive experience for all of us. So I want to open up the chats to questions about us, our mental health history, and then continue to open it up for your guys' story. Share a comment. What's going on with you? What's your journey been like? What's your treatment been like? Anything.
You asked a question, or you texted me the other day about what do you do when it's like a rainy day? And today was a rainy day.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like, do you have any sort of, I think we're about to go into a phase, a couple months of cold, maybe rainy, difficult to get out. What do you do in those circumstances?
Yeah, I've kind of done it already, but so there's a couple things. Number one, some things to know. The majority of you watching this show, I would bet my life on it that you're sensitive people, meaning like you're sensitive to other people's reactions. You may be sensitive to the weather. You may be sensitive to your environment, sensitive to social situations. And that's just important to realize that part of dealing with anything that reactivity in mental health is managing some sort of sensitivity. And once you can get really clear about that, it helps. It helps for you to start to be like, whoa, I'm starting to feel a little funky. Well, why am I feeling funky? Maybe you're in a place that's a mess and it just causes chaos in your mind. Maybe you just walked out, or you're in a part of town that's just kind of crappy looking and you just succumb to you can kind of feel the energy of the place. It's not kept for, it's not maintained. Maybe you're around somebody who's just really negative or just really, all these things are really common sensitivities we find in people. And so I texted Ennis asking about the weather because I think we both can be affected by just grayer days. So I've been kind of focused on this for a year because seasonal depression is like rampant with our clients and with even not with clients, with just friends and family and people I have. I actually don't know too many people who don't feel like they go down for the winter and for the end of the fall. And some of the reason is like, if you're a sensitive person and you see the leaves are off the trees, everything's a little more bare, the sky's a little more gray, it's a little less cold. You can't help but be connected to that environment, that it's more of an environment of like the death before the rebirth of spring. And there's all kinds of things that are related to like life cycles and a woman's, what's the nice way to say it? A woman's
monthly cycle.
Monthly cycle, thank you. And so it's all really interconnected. It's
incredibly interconnected.
Yeah.
I mean,
the
time of day.
That's real aggressive.
The time of day.
It's incredible. It scared me.
But it really is. I mean, every little thing, your environment, the time of day, the time of year, the time of month, the time of week, everything is has an effect on you. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be a victim to that, right? No, it doesn't mean you're powerless in it too. But raising the awareness of it is so important, so that you just can first identify what's going on. Because if it seems like it's just it's raining and I'm going to be miserable, that sucks big time. So I assertively, if not aggressively, find ways to find great things in the rain, like things I enjoy, like going out in the rain. Or if it rains, maybe there's specific activities I might do. Maybe, the girlfriend and I will, have a couch night or something. Find some kind of really positive benefit so that just, you condition yourself, which is the most kind of primal way our mind works. You start to condition yourself to feel something positive when it happens. So it's not,
oh my God, it's raining. I'm low energy. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm raining after work today. You know, I'm gonna snuggle up with my honey.
Yeah, you on a rainy day, you have these rituals that, like you said, create these positive associations. On rainy days, I'm gonna make apple cider. I'm gonna make a hot chocolate. I'm going to read a certain book or watch a certain movie. I'm going to go outside and do what I can. It's just really, it's a combination of, okay, there is a very real energy input from the day. If it's cloudy, if it's cold, if it's hot, your energy systems are totally affected, and they're kind of they're setting you up to feel a certain way. And if you just go autopilot, you can be pretty susceptible to it.
100%.
But if you go intentional, you have a lot of control about how you feel.
Yeah.
It's very similar to you go to a party and everybody's upset. Yeah, it's easy to be upset too if you're on autopilot and you're just kind of like derping through the day. But if you're intentional, you can move into an environment where everybody is upset, but you can stay grounded and stay fine.
So check it out. Like, one of the key elements to being healthy and maintaining health is working with your environment. 100%. So it's like, you know, if you ever see the Maria Kondo getting organized or whatever that is, it's like you come in, you kind of feel the energy of the place. It doesn't have to be this hippie or whatever, but to me, it's not very hippie. But like, you just work with the flow or energy of the place or the environment. And it's the same with like when you're an entertainer. It's like you read the room, right?
Yeah.
So you read where are the places you can kind of wiggle in and just uplift everything. And it's the same with weather. So like maybe you open the window and just listen to the rain and do a rain meditation. For me, being a barbarian, I like to just run out in the rain. I love it because the rain to me is like there's a part of me that's kind of like a goober who's like, oh, it's raining. I don't want to go outside and get wet. And so I was just like, no, like we're going. And every single time I go, no matter how cold it is, I'll put on some rain gear. I'll take the dog out.
Yeah.
Every time we go out, it turns me into a kid. It turns me into a little kid playing in the mud, playing in the rain. And it's like the greatest experience. So then I go out and I'm cold and I'm running around, so I'm hot, and then I'm cold again. And maybe an hour goes by or 2 hours and I'm wrestling with the dog and we're throwing sticks and we're getting dirty. And then we come in, just like you used to when you'd play out in the winter. If anybody's from New England or has a harsh winter, you come in and you're tired and you're dirty. And you take off the dirty clothes, you take a shower, it's nice and warm, it feels so good. You put on some fresh clothes and you're like exhausted like after a workout. And then you just... and it feels so good, man.
Yeah.
It feels so good. So I think some of the key elements, places to start are, number one, if you're affected by the weather or really any environment, write down what the parts of you that feel restricted and how they feel restricted. How do you feel restricted? Do you feel like you can't go outside? Do you feel like it's gray and you can't get sunlight, or your energy's pretty low? And once you identify what's going on in some of those blocks, you can start to diagnose, well, what can I do? If I was to be really assertive about doing something to counteract this, or is there something I can do to make me feel more peaceful or to find the enjoyment in it? And now you're really, really empowering yourself, and you've met the core of maintaining your mental health, which is assertive adaptability, adapting to your environment and being really assertive about what can I do? Here's what I got. What can I do? I broke my leg. What can I do? I'm in this. I have to spend 3 days with my parents. What can I do? Any circumstance. There's always something you can do if you're willing to be open-minded, open-hearted, and even willing to get help.
And when you really notice how much of an impact your environment makes on you, it just naturally starts to change your behavior. You start to clean your house, not because you think you should or because people are coming over, but because you feel the difference when you're in a clean environment.
Absolutely.
You might burn some sage or some incense, not because of the smell, not because of the whatever, but just because of the way it feels afterwards. You might go outside and take a 2-hour-long walk in the woods or a 2-hour-long walk by the water, just because of the way it feels afterwards. I like how you mentioned if you're somebody listening to this, you probably are a bit sensitive. You probably are more in touch with how the environment affects you. And if that's the case for you, just become aware of it. Start to manage that environment. keep a clean room, keep a clean environment as much as you can. That includes the people around you. If you're noticing that certain people are continually triggering you in certain ways,
They gotta go.
I mean, at the very least, take a look at that.
You gotta have a conversation, something. Yeah, it's so important to honor that. And if you don't, if you any kind of I'm trying to think of a way to say this, any sort of like inability to adapt or accept the circumstance, whatever it is resistance, and the resistance is going to maintain whatever the negative feeling is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Whatever you resist persists. Whatever you accept transforms. I don't even know where I heard that, but it's just
great.
utterly true. And the more you can explore that, the more you'll find that it's true for you. And this might be getting a bit hippy dippy, but there's like very real things you can do to clear your energy. I mean, I've heard taking a shower 5 times a day has been shown to be
It's wild.
effective.
Taking a shower in general is an amazing coping
Yeah.
mechanism. Just to zap you out. It's a heavy sensory experience. It's a cleansing. It's so good for your nervous system, or if you're in like a depression or really an anxiety.
Yeah.
Just taking a cold shower to get your sensory system going can be a complete reset.
If you take like 5 cold showers a day, could you imagine?
That seems like a lot. Though.
But if you're hearing this and you're like, I don't know what to do, I feel stuck, nothing's working, take 5 cold showers a day for the next week and just see what happens. I'm so curious.
Dr. Ennis says take 5 cold showers a day. I know what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
It's like there's a lot of great coping mechanisms to reset and kind of cleanse your energy. Even changing your clothes, combing your hair, shaving, calling somebody out of the blue. Just something to break the autopilot, because a lot of
Get
emotion
dressed,
and behavior.
Put on that nice cologne or perfume that you only wear on special occasions. And
Or get undressed and walk around the house without any clothes on. I did that the other day. It was fantastic.
So
Sorry,
Rita
Ennis's
says,
mom.
Rita says, yes,
my bad.
what did she say? Your input helped me understand my family viewed mental health as a stigma and would not acknowledge how some of my family members suffered with depression, anxiety, but would, okay. So it's like by becoming an LPC, you're almost like,
You're making them see something in themselves that they don't want to see.
yeah. I mean, I think it's like becoming, I don't know, a vegan activist if your family's a bunch of cattle farmers. You're just
butcher.
like, it's kind of going against the grain.
So classic family of alcoholism. The kids classically are the type to put stuff to the side. Like, don't talk about it. Don't talk about what you saw. And so with this new profession that you have, that might be like raising a little bit of light into something they're trying to keep into the shadows. Like, no, we don't. And so it makes sense they would be resistant.
That's a good one.
Scared about it.
Rita, the best thing I can say is like, don't try to change your family and friends. Don't do it. If they ask for help, help them, but don't offer help left and right. And
Don't be preaching.
If you come off as preachy or judgmental or trying to change them, it's just not a good idea. So don't do that. If they ask for help, help. But
just be true to yourself and be in your energy. Let them be in whatever they're into. Because if this happens with people all the time, and this is really tricky. Tell me how you deal with this. I'm interested. When you see something with somebody you're close with, there's such a I find I have a hard time with being clear about when is the time to kind of point it out and when is the time to let them go through their journey. Now, as coaches, we're paid in session to help people see their blind spots, but there's a way we have to do it where you have to kind of lead them to it, so it's almost like their own realization versus, hey, I see this and this is happening. And this is really apparent in the mode of therapy we use, internal family systems, which is if you go to a deep emotion, something that they have a lot of other parts that are trying to hide. So like if maybe there's an alcoholic part that's covering up something up, or maybe there's a part that, just hides away something they think people can't see, but they can, and you go to that deeper emotion or that deeper thing, it's going to trigger their system, and it might trigger some really, really, really heavy and impulsive reactions. So how do you do in your personal life? Where do you find yourself with sometimes you leave things alone with other people and sometimes you point them out?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not great at it. It's something that
You do it with me all the time, bro.
Rita, I say don't do it because I know how terrible it is. So I say it to be clear. It's like, it's really hard if somebody really close to you is, suffering, and it's right in your face.
Yeah.
It's like, it's hard not to say something.
Yeah.
It's hard not to point out, like, this is what I think is going on. And, but for me, the moments where I've seen really, really good things happen is when I can just kind of be not judgmental at all.
Yes.
Not be impatient at all.
Yeah.
Not be expecting anything at all.
Yes.
Not be trying to make anything happen or change anything.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like listening or empathizing. And if somebody asks a question, happily answering. And also what works is sharing my own things. So if someone's like sitting there angry and I'm like, instead of saying like, don't be angry, why are you angry? I expect you not to be angry. It's more like a month ago, I was really angry when this happened. And just sharing a time when I was angry and what I did about it.
I find that in a moment where, like, if somebody's angry, if I just point out how I feel in that moment, that can help too. And just be like, man, this is kind of weird, but I have to say something because it's on my mind.
Yeah.
I feel uncomfortable because I feel like you're really angry at me or something, and I'm feeling like I'm kind of scared. I don't know what to say. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells.
I think as a way to open up a conversation, that's really great. But I think as long as it's coming from like whenever there's an intense judgment, that is where the problem is. And people don't realize that judgment can come in so many different forms.
Yeah.
It can come in the expectations that we have.
Yep.
It can come in the good intentions that we have. It can come in subtle ways that we may not notice. So typically you'll find that as you let go of any sort of expectation, there's a great what was it? It was like Sadhguru. He's an incredible spiritual teacher. His daughter is like growing up, and he's got all these programs and classes and ways of being happy, and his daughter's like, why didn't you ever teach me how to do this stuff? And he's like, you didn't ask.
Yeah.
Do you want to? And so then but I thought that was interesting that like your own daughter, it's like years and years and years you're doing all this stuff, but to have the wherewithal to be like, when she's ready, she'll ask. And then before then, I don't need to push anything on this person. I don't need to have any agenda with this person besides loving them and having a good time.
Yeah. And Rita, I would recommend a book called Crucial Conversations, which is a great book about how to maintain kind of a safe conversational space when the stakes or the emotion can be really high. It's amazing. Actually, Ennis put me onto it. I think it's sold millions of copies. It's absolutely incredible. And I would highly recommend that if you're wanting to have this conversation but don't know where to start and feel like it could really go awry.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Amanda says, I just showered because for the love of God, today whipped my tail. Wash it off. Wash off the day. Don says, I've heard to stick your face in ice water helps anxiety. Yeah, so that actually activates what's called your dive reflex, right?
Yeah, something like that.
It can activate your dive reflex, but if you just take some water, splash it, it can help. First of all, I mean, it's such a beautiful, calming, sensory soothing tool, and it'll definitely zap you out. I mean, take a cold shower and try to 5
cold showers a day.
Watch what happens to your thoughts. They get real simple about, oh shit, this is cold. Yeah.
Lisa says, what about if the people who might trigger you are your dear loved ones? I can't just kick them to the curb.
I think I misspoke when I said I think I was sensationalizing. I don't advocate just kicking people to the curb. I advocate that as the absolute last straw to protect yourself, because I truly believe that doing what we talked about, even just in the last little segment and last question here, where you come to people with an open, honest conversation, more of a meeting of the minds than having an intention to have them change, share how you feel and do all these great behaviors. I truly believe that when you come from the right place, a deeper, more sensitive, more vulnerable, more intimate place, that you'll be met much more likely with that same energy.
Yeah. I think Jim kind of had in mind like straight up abusive relationships or really bad situations.
Yeah.
But in the majority of cases, when you're getting triggered, it's going to be the people closest to you. And in the majority of cases, it's not them, it's just it's something in you is reacting to it. So it's kind of poking that button, whatever your button is. And when you can explore that in yourself, you can get to a point where that person may act in the exact same way, but it won't trigger you anymore. I've lived this. I have today relationships where 5 years ago, if the person was behaving in a certain way, it would trigger me. Today, they do the exact same thing. It has no emotional effect. It's not because they changed. It's because I changed. So likewise, with you, if you're getting triggered by people around you, of course, step one is like have a conversation. Read crucial conversations. Start to talk about it. And that is unbelievably effective when you can just talk about it, see what's going on. But if the person is not in a place where they can change or wants to change or is receptive to that in any way, which is often the case, and their behavior is still going to be the same for the next few years or so, then you want to look at like what is getting triggered in you. Why is that getting triggered?
Yeah.
When they do something, do you feel like that says something about you?
Right.
Are you judging yourself because they're doing something? Or do you expect them just not to because of some like judgment or some predetermined thing?
Those relationships are a gold mine, by the way, as far as like personal development or learning about yourself. The relationships that trigger you are an absolute gold mine.
Yeah.
But like, I just want to echo what Ennis said about you're not going to control what they do. You can just simply set the table as best as you can. You can't make them sit. Today, I was in line to at an urgent care, and there was a guy smoking close to me, and I asked him if he would be willing to move because it's smoke. I don't like it.
Where were you? Inside?
No, we were outside. But like, if you have a cigarette, like if I'm smoking next to you this close, it's just kind of drafting. So I asked him. I called him brother. I tried to set the table, be very nice, like, hey brother, like, you know, I know it's annoying. I'm sorry, I'm sensitive, but do you think you could go smoke over there somewhere where I'm not wafting it? He didn't like that. He didn't like it at all, Ennis. And so he starts kind of getting frustrated and kind of, and I could feel his like sensitivity. Like he's an incredibly sensitive guy, probably about 70 years old. He got upset. And so he took a few steps back. He says, "This good enough?" And it wasn't. It wasn't good enough. And I said, "I'm sorry, man. Like it's still right here." And so he just throws a full cigarette down, steps on, and said, "How about that?" And I go, "Brother, we don't need to do this all or nothing thing. Like I'm just, whatever." But he's sensitive, so he walks away, and I can tell he's really agitated.
He should have been like, "Actually, can you pick it up and throw it over there?"
Well, no, of course, you're right. I could, right, of course. And like for me, it is what it is. Like,
yeah.
So there's parts of me like, so he comes back over and talks to me. He's pretty confrontational. And so I can feel these different parts of me activating. Like there's a protective part. There's kind of a part that's like, am I going to have to whip an old dude's ass right now? Like, I really don't want to. And then I start thinking, I'm going to go to jail. Like, nah. So, but it was really interesting. And really, what I really wanted to do was invite him to sit next to me and be like, man, like, talk to me. Like, what's up? Why, why? I'm trying to connect with you. I'm trying to maintain a space. I'm really tried to be non-offensive, and there was no judgment at all. but it was so obvious that I activated some really heavy sensitivity in him. And there was, in that instance, without really engaging, like really, really, really engaging, there was no way to kind of save that conversation. So my expectation was just, hey, I'm going to ask if he's willing to move aside, because it's, I don't like being in the smoke. And it didn't go that well. Mm-hmm. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really okay.
That's a really cool insight. It's like somebody got mad, but does that mean that what you did was, let's say...
Wait, finish that sentence, though, because that's important.
So somebody got mad, and it meant that you had to feel a certain way about it. So let me paint a picture for you. You had this action. You were like, you made a simple, I would say, appropriate request. 2 ways he could have reacted. Meant infinite ways, but let's say one was like, you know what, man? You're right.
No,
you're right.
I don't even think that far,
but imagine
though.
this. Imagine this. Imagine he goes, you know what, man? You're right. I shouldn't even be smoking this anyway. He puts it out. He goes, thank you. That really made my day. Thank you, man. And then in the others, let's say in another parallel world, he's like, how could you say that to me? He pulls out a gun and shoots you in the face.
Dude,
so now
crossed my mind.
So two different outcomes.
Yeah.
Same action.
Yeah.
Now, if he had been all nice and was like, you changed my day. You reminded me that I shouldn't be. Thanks, man. And he's just like, you feel like that you did the best thing ever, right? Big reward. Big feeling of like reward.
I don't know.
Versus he shoots you. So like, I guess what I'm saying is it's really, really, really natural for human beings to determine whether or not what they did was right based on how it resulted.
Right.
And I'm saying, no, you are not entitled to their reaction.
Right.
You're only entitled to your actions. So you do what you think is right. And if somebody gets mad or happy or whatever, it's like, you can't control that.
You can't control.
You just do what you can do, and don't judge yourself. If they got upset, don't judge yourself. If they got super happy, don't get full of yourself. Don't have a reaction. Just do what you think is best, and whatever happens, happens.
I like how you illustrate that you're not entitled to their reaction, meaning like you're not going to control their reaction.
Yeah.
There's things you can do to deliver in the best way. Mm-hmm. Certain tools, like for me, it was trying to take ownership of like, hey, this is my thing. Like I need help. And then just trying to reaffirm that with them is like, I'm sorry, brother. We need to help each other out. Like, I'm sorry that it upset you. But also, just having the emotional intelligence to be like, wow, I hit a nerve in him.
Yeah.
And not necessarily react to the reaction until it becomes a real life or death situation.
And speaking of that, it's like, this is a good example of like, he got triggered from something that you said, but another 10 other people you could have asked the same thing to 10 other people, and they might have been like, oh yeah, sure. And they would have felt, I've seen you do that all the time. That one time at first watch, you were like, hey man, go over there. And he did.
I just asked him, yeah.
I don't know what he felt, but I would imagine that there's going to be some people that get triggered like that guy. Other people that feel nothing. They're just like, oh, okay. And they move. But the thing is, like, it's not you triggering people by this simple request. It's everybody's has a different reaction to things.
Yeah.
And so if that guy was to do some exploring and kind of look at like, why did I get so upset? What beliefs do I have about myself that somebody would ask me that and that I would react that way? He can get to a point in his life where a month from now, another tattooed gentleman might be like, hey sir, can you go over there? And he would have a totally different reaction.
Sure. And
same action, different reaction. I think that's really, really crucial to notice in yourself.
Absolutely.
In all your situations.
Absolutely. And that's where a lot of the parts work comes in. And that's where practicing the pause, as a wonderful client of mine says all the time, I practice the pause to first notice, especially if there's a heavy emotion. It's like, whoa, okay, we hit a raw spot here. What's going on? Do the exploration so you understand it better. And that's how it intuitively will shift, intuitively, because you want to feel calm, confident, happy. And that's the reaction you want to have with situations like that. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, man. So we're coming near the end of our time here. If anybody has any final questions, feel free to throw it in. But
this
really,
was the Ennis fan club day today. I love
think
it.
so.
I'm
yeah.
a fan,
I'm
dude. I'm gonna
surprised.
put something nice in the chat about you.
That'd be great.
Ennis rules.
That'd be great.
I've been working with him for over a year.
That's great. So for anybody out there who's going through whatever you're going through, we're here. We're here on Tuesdays at 7 Central.
Yep.
If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you know anybody who you think could benefit from something like this, feel free to send them this video. Feel free to schedule a call or tell them to schedule a call.
Yeah, and you can do that through just private messaging us on Facebook. There's also a link to schedule a call. It's a free 45-minute coaching call. We'll talk about you. And it's really the best way to get personalized,
Feedback.
Yeah, feedback, but also just a personalized, what are your next steps? What are you striving for? What modes of either coaching or therapy are going to be best for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so we're here if you need anything. I guess just to reiterate, it's an uphill journey. You're gonna have days that are bad. You're gonna have weeks that are bad. There's gonna be mistakes along the way, and as long as you just keep going in that general direction, you're gonna see progress. If something's not working, try something else. So often we hear people say, well, I've tried this medication, that medication, talk therapy, and this and that, and it didn't work. That's okay. That's fine. There's cognitive behavioral therapy. There's internal family systems therapy. There's lifestyle changes. Meditation and yoga really do work if you practice them consistently. Here's
the other thing I want to address too is I hear all the time oh, there was a really traumatic event. I dealt with it when I was 20. Now I'm 45. Processing through these things is not a one and done for most people. Maybe processing through a stage of it, but then when you're 45 and maybe something's happening with your kids in the association with the event or something that comes up. So we really advocate just honoring how you feel. If you feel like something's bubbling, if you feel like there's an incongruence or a misalignment in you emotionally, spiritually, physically, whatever, get help. Get to the bottom of it. Prioritize that. Prioritize yourself. Prioritize, your sanity, your peace, your calm, and it will ripple to everybody and everything around you 100%.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
That was done. That was great, man. I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. Anything else you want to echo?
Not really, man.
Cool.
I think we're good.
Let's promote the YouTube page. By the way, this has been our most successful stream on YouTube as far as viewership. So Thank you guys so much for being to YouTube. You guys can check out our YouTube page. Go to YouTube and search for Inner Solutions, and you find the page with our logo. We simulcast on Facebook and YouTube at the same time, and we're releasing content all the time. We've got 10 videos in the queue. I've got a list of about 25 more that we'll be shooting in the next couple weeks. So
I got to get on the thumbnails.
all beautiful things about symptoms of anxiety, dealing with panic attacks, dealing with depression, depersonalization, lifestyle, everything that's going to help your mental health and your anxiety overall. And beyond that, we just want to say, no matter who you are, no matter how long your ailments have been going on, no matter how long you've been struggling for, you're never stuck. You might just need some support. So for Ennis, I'm Jim. We're Inner Solutions. Thank you guys so much. So much love out there to you. Remember, good times and good mental health. Thanks. We're still live on YouTube.